Will we just begin recycling clothing now and using recycled clothes just so they can make more clothes so that we can recycle it? So that's a bit of a worry. It's not the end of the world, but personally for me, I'm more of somebody who wants to buy less clothing, nicer clothing that will last for a long time, and clothing that was made locally by a local artist or just a local sewer, and from materials that are made right in the country if at all possible, especially like a wool sweater, because they're really high quality and they last a very long time. And if it was made right in the country, then we cut down on airplane fuel and all these issues, and it's made right here locally, and so that is helpful. If everyone were to just all of a sudden buy wool and all these sheep farms went up, that might not be a balanced way to go about it either, but yeah, just lots to think about and consider. So glad you're here and interested in making things with fiber. So we get started on this wool breeds video. Merino is great for making anything wearable, scarves. I have used it like in my slippers, and I've made slippers with merino, but I don't find they last as long as the Corriedale. And so I'm going to stick with Corriedale for now on. But merino wool is lovely fiber. You can make handbags with it. It is quite strong, but when it comes to durability and agitation and chafing and things like that, it will pill over time and create holes. So something to keep in mind with merino wool. It's great for delicate items. And then another one I have in white that I don't see, but I have it in blue. So this is also merino wool, and it's just a fine combed merino wool. So it's the same as the other fiber I just showed you, but it's been brushed. And so the fiber filaments are longer, and that will make it a little bit more strong when you felt it. And it makes it a little bit easier to felt with or less time consuming. So that's nice to use. Also good for delicate types of things, and also way easier to dye if you're going to dye roving. So I also have some possum merino, which I don't use as often. But I will use it in garments or inside slippers or somewhere where I want it to be quite warm. And the reason why I don't use it too often is because I just like to keep balance in things, and the possums are hunted in New Zealand, which is great for the environment and the birds and just keeping a balance in the ecosystem here. But I also don't want to promote overhunting these animals, and I don't want to promote any sort of farming or anything, so I don't want everyone to go out and use possum, but it's a beautiful fiber. It's one of the warmest fibers. And so if you're desperate to be warm, have hot feet, and you have cold feet, go with possum. You won't regret it. So that's a nice fiber that I use. So the next fiber that I have is, if you're a beginner felter, you want to use this wool. This is Corriedale wool, and it's not as fine as merino, but it's quite soft and it's strong, and it's great for pretty much any project. You can make so many things with this fiber, and it's great for larger projects because it felts quite quickly. So it cuts the felting time in half compared to felting with merino if you're making bigger projects. If you're making delicate item like scarves, merino can be quite quick, especially if it's sort of a small thing. But if you're making large projects like cat beds and things, this fiber is an all-rounder, and so it's Corriedale wool, and it's definitely something you want to look for and use when you're learning to felt. It's just so easy to work with, and even if you're not a new felter, this is just a fantastic wool, and when it's finished, it has a nice smooth finish, so I really like this. And it's quite popular and can be found in many countries, which is nice. So the next fiber I have is Gotland. This is from the Gotland sheep breed, and it has a thicker fiber than the Corriedale, but it has a really nice finish when it's done. It's quite soft, and I would say it's a little bit softer than the Corriedale, but it's difficult to felt with. For some reason, when it gets wet, it doesn't seem to hold water. And also, I find there's a lot of space between the fibers, and when you go and try to felt it, it just takes a little bit extra strength to get it to felt down to the size you want it. And so I love the fiber, I love the feel of it, and I love the look of it, but I'm leaning towards not using it as much, because I like things to be easy, and this does not make my life as easy. But if you're a Gotland lover, this is a very nice wool to use. So another one I have is the alpaca. And alpaca is a fine fiber, just like merino, but it's quite fluffy, and it also has a luster. I haven't actually felted with alpaca, but I did make a test sample, and I've made samples before, and I've really never liked the look of it. Maybe I'm not using it in the right way for felting, but I prefer to just stick with spinning and knitting with this fiber. It has little fluffies that come off the yarn, and it's just so warm and cozy, and it's so soft against your skin. But when it comes to felting it, it just kind of has a rough, rustic, matty look to it. But it's definitely something you can felt with and try out for yourself. Another fiber I have is the mohair, and this is from the mohair sheep, or it's actually a goat. It has long locks, and so the fiber filaments are quite long. It's a very strong fiber. It's also quite soft depending on how old the animal actually is. But this is nice to felt with. I particularly don't like the roving so much, because it's similar to the alpaca, where it's just super fuzzy and it's a little bit rustic looking, and it's just not my style. I like things to be clean and smooth and crisp. Not for my knitwear. I like all my knitwear nice and fluffy. So another fiber I wanted to try was this viscose that I bought when I was just buying some other wool, and I haven't really tried it either, but it does felt similarly to, it has a very similar look to the mohair. It has a very high sheen, and also some of these fibers don't felt on their own, like the viscose, and even the possum doesn't, most likely I think, doesn't felt on its own, so it's usually blended with something else. And so if you were to use viscose or banana fiber or anything like that, or even silk roving, it doesn't actually felt on its own. And if it's a fine fiber like viscose and mohair and alpaca or possum, I recommend mixing that with merino wool. And I also experimented with this fiber here because it is a blend, I believe, of merino and tencel, something I also don't use enough of, but I did want to make a sample out of it because it has a very particular look to it, and so it's just nice to know what that looks like and how it felt. And so yeah, it's pretty much just a fine merino. It's not too finicky, maybe a little staticky to work with, but it has like a pretty nice luster and it wrinkles quite